Hey, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, and I am so excited because today I am with Dana Brigman from the Well-Oiled Canine. If you do not know Dana, you really should, especially if you're interested in essential oils. Uh, Dana and, and other things. The Dana got a little feedback and other things.
Hold on.
I'm going to mute you for a second till you sort that out. Hey, Patty, good to see you. We're having small technical difficulties, so hopefully this will settle in a minute. But at any rate, Dana has, for the last 13 years, been training dogs with an emphasis on complex behavioral issues because they ain't getting easier. And she is also certified in animal aromatherapy, Reiki, nutrition, and homeopathy. She is a self-described learning junkie when it comes to natural wellness, and she's on a mission for dogs to eat better, feel better, live longer, happier, healthy lives. She loves the process of troubleshooting the most complex issues and helping dog mamas find the optimal solution. So, Dana, I'm so glad you're here with us. Hopefully we got that feedback issue resolved. And
We did. I'm so sorry.
Not a worry. It's like, wait a minute. So we're all good. So we've got some folks jumping on, which is amazing. I think that we worry about the big stuff in terms of, oh my gosh, what's coming from external sources in terms of toxins. But what we don't think about a lot of times is what's actually in our homes, in the bowl, literally, in terms of food, and in the bowl in terms of how it's made. So what do you think are some of the most common toxic foods that pet parents are unknowingly giving their dogs?
Well, I think everybody's trying to do the best that they know how. But I think certainly when we start talking about toxins, one of the things we have to look closely at in the food is all of those grain products that may be loaded with glyphosate, fertilizers, all of those kinds of things. They pass right on through to the food and into our dog's body and create lots of health concerns many times. Also, the food itself could create intolerance issues, meaning what we're actually putting in may be a good food, but it doesn't land well in our specific dog's body. And therefore they have a lot of reactions. And what we know is when a body can't process things properly, it's going to flare up in some way. It may show up as a skin condition or a health issue, or the body may start storing things that the liver can't assimilate and process out. So all of those things can start to lead us down a very troublesome path of wondering why our dog is not doing well when we think we're feeding great food.
And I think that's really important. And the other thing is how the food is processed. So
Sure.
we know, for instance, in canned foods, especially canned cat food, the AGEs, the advanced glycation end products, are astronomically high because the food is actually cooked in the can. So it's been sitting in there interacting with the plastic lining. And a lot of the bags of kibble are also lined with plastic. And
Right.
similar things happen. Those AGEs leach into the food. So it's a problem not only in terms of contents of the food, but how the food is packaged.
Sure. And we can even see where in dry foods, for example, they come in bags, and a lot of people will dump them out into a plastic container. That plastic can be problematic. We know that it can lead to microplastics or leaching of those plastics into the food itself, but also the air exposure every time we open those bags and or containers can start to lead us to mold type issues or mycotoxins or things of that nature, which can really be problematic to the dog's health or the cat's health.
Right on. And so I think, for that reason, I'm not sure if you would recommend this, but for years, if you've got a big bag of food that you're buying, because you're trying to save money, throw that thing in the freezer and just scoop out
Right.
a week's worth of food at a time. Same thing with supplements. I think the more time we open them, and the more chance we have to introduce oxygen, which will degrade, and then other things we don't want to. So maybe take out 1 or 2 weeks worth of like a powdered supplement or a capsule, put them in little pill containers, and then just feed from there. But remember to clean those on a regular basis.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm all about putting food in the freezer and, making sure that we're keeping it as fresh as we can before we feed it. And one thing to point out to anybody that is trying to put it in a storage container is never put fresh over top of what's been there, because the
Amen.
bottom is really going to become a problem someday.
Right on. And that's where you need to keep just cleaning, if you're doing that, clean the thing out before you put the
Mhm.
stuff in there. And
Absolutely.
definitely use a non-reactive container, like some sort of ideally a stainless steel container, glass, that's not going to add contaminants to the
That's
food.
right.
Now, one of the big things in your wheelhouse is essential oils, and so we see all sorts of crazy stuff all over the internet about, oh my God, they're toxic, or no, they're completely safe, and you can basically just, douse your dog in them. So somewhere in there lies the truth. So
Right.
in your experience, what's been the safest way to use essential oils for pets?
I think, so there's definitely a lot of controversy around the ingestion of essential oils. And we do have to be careful about that. But, when we talk about diffusing or aromatics, and that may even be us putting an essential oil on a bandana that can come off, and we use that as an intermittent diffuser that's actually closer to the animal's body, especially for things like respiratory, they can be super safe, right? The key is, are we using the right oil? Is it a high quality oil, not one that we've bought at Walmart,
No.
right? Quality matters, and that's true of everything, right? And I think sometimes people think they have a quality product when they really don't. And if you start looking at the labels and digging a little deeper into brands, you'll see some of them that really should be highly therapeutic. They'll say that it's a skin irritant or for aromatic purposes only, as if it's air freshener, which is a very different approach to things. So diffusing can be very effective, very safe. And what we always say is, when you start diffusing something like that and you're first introducing your dog to essential oils, is give them a escape route, or a cat especially. If they don't want to be in the room while that is diffusing, then let them go. And a lot of people are fearful, even in my client base, they have dogs and they have a cat, and they're like, I can't use essential oils because I have a cat. Well, that's not true. I know veterinarians that have diffusers going in their practices all the time. Now they rotate those oils. It's not the same oil every single day, but she'll post pictures and her cat is literally wrapped around the diffuser, taking it all in, Give
Right
me
on.
more. So diffusing is great. And then topically is great, where we put a drop in our hand with maybe some coconut oil or olive oil. We just pet the dog or rub their ears, or things of that nature will help start to acclimate them to getting essential oils in their environment.
Right on. And I think what you said is great. If you're diffusing an oil and the dog or the cat leaves the room, then probably that oil is not for them. Is that a
Right.
good assessment? So
Right.
that's great.
And it
And then,
doesn't mean it's toxic. It just means, hey, not
right.
today. Not today.
And I think that is really critical too, right? Because they're better at discerning what they need, what they don't need.
Hmm.
So that's amazing. And that's a great lined up. Like, yeah, my dog consistently likes staying in the room while I'm diffusing this. So this would be a great thing to start to apply topically. Is that a
Right.
fair statement?
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I was with a client, and this dog has some behavioral issues. And one of the things that I was thinking about this particular dog is that the liver was underburdened, right? So I took several oils that I know are targeted at helping to detoxify the liver. And we just literally twisted the cap off a little bit and let the dog approach the different bottles. It chose one over the others, right? It had a choice. And it said, I really like this one. So we took it out and the mom put it on her hand. Well, the dog started licking it right off of her hand. So now we went straight to ingestion, but the dog wanted to do it. And I knew that it was safe to do. And it's like, the dog was like, I can't get enough of this. Obviously, we controlled how much it was, but it knew what it needed.
Right on. And I think we don't trust ourselves to know what we need. And we
That's right.
are accustomed to making the choices for our dogs and cats.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't take a supplement, I think we're like, no, you have to take it. And they're really telling us that this doesn't serve me well.
Right. And I think that's where, and this is a little an aside, but that's where muscle testing can come into play. Right. Does my dog need this supplement today? Right. And muscle testing is a point in time. It's like, in this moment, is this the right one for you to take today? And how much? We can even figure out how much they need based on muscle testing.
Right on. And for those of you that don't have access to someone that can help you muscle test, there's a very simple test called a sway test. Mm-hmm. And so if you practice this on your own, then you can start to get some, calibration as to, whether you're getting correct information or not correct information. And then from there, really start to develop your skills. Mm-hmm. But
I often teach pet parents with a pendulum to do it as well.
Right on. So, and that's awesome that you're teaching them this technique, mm-hmm. so that they've got that skill going forward.
Right. And it really is a matter of trusting that information, that we're not overly trying to influence it, or we're doubting it, that we really do start to trust that process.
Sweet. Well, here's a question from Karen. Adding an essential oil to laundry for a pleasant but not overpowering scent. What do you think of that?
So I tend to put lemongrass on my dryer balls. I don't use dryer sheets. I will use those wool dryer balls, and I always put some essential oils on it. Lemongrass happens to be my favorite, but you can use lavender. You could use cedarwood. Any one is fine. When we put it through heat, it is not going to have any sort of therapeutic property. It's just going to fragrance our laundry, but there's nothing really that you could not put into a dryer ball.
So really just whatever pleases you.
Whatever you enjoy, yeah.
Right on. And, you talked briefly about selecting essential oils carefully. And I've run into a situation where I got an essential oil that I was using for myself, I think topically, and it was tainted, and I actually got sick from it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, and you idiot, you bought this in like Natural Grocers or something. So even though it's in a natural store, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a safe or high quality product. So when you're selecting, I think there are really several high quality brands in the US, but when
Sure.
do you have one brand that you prefer to stick with?
I am a Young Living gal. It's my go-to, and it has been for the past, 15 years. So I'm probably never going to change. I always say if I find something better, then I'll shift. But so far I have not. But there are some other good quality brands. My clients can ask me about anything, or people in my group can ask about anything. But if you bought it at Bed Bath & Beyond, Body Works, Walmart, any of those, Target, they're not going to be these high-end quality oils that we can trust. They're really going to be more of an air freshener, more of a fragrance. And you can dig deep into your brand. And so there are probably 4 brands that I'll let my clients even consider using, and that's Young Living, doTERRA, Plant Therapy, and Mountain Rose Herbs, and maybe Eden's Garden.
Right on. Yeah, they do have a pet line, Sheila. Exactly. So the interesting thing is that like okay, it's an air freshener, but really diffusing
It's
that, if it's
not.
got toxic stuff in it, that's just not a good plan too, because
No.
then you're
And
breathing all of that in.
in fact, I know of a dog through one of my holistic vet friends. She had a case where it was a big mastiff who had a brain tumor, and they were using like plug-ins in his environment, and they had many of them. So now we're into this synthetic category of fragrance, right? And essential oils can be that. A lot of times when we see them advertised on the TV as an essential oil in something like a plug-in, it is not an authentic oil. It is a synthetic. And those can be highly dangerous.
Right on. And even if you're getting a product that is an essential oil, if they're contaminated with something and you're aerosolizing that, that is also bad
Yeah.
news.
And that has to do with the growing process, the region in which it grows, what chemicals, if any, are they using in the growing process. I know, weed control is an important thing, but it's interesting when I study Young Living and listen to them, they basically use other essential oils to manage the farm,
Right on.
right? To remove glyphosate from the soil, or, things of that nature. And it's just really fascinating how that works. So if you start to study the company, then you know that their growing process, their distillation process, and their bottling process is safe. There was a time many years ago where the country of France was exporting more lavender in essential oil format than they grew in the entire country. So how was that possible? They were adding something to it.
Right on. So again, those brands you recommend are Young Living.
doTERRA,
Mm-hmm.
Plant Therapy,
Mm-hmm.
Mountain Rose Herbs,
Right on.
and Eden's Garden.
Right on. Okay, cool.
That's not to say there aren't others. Those are just sort of the top of the top.
Right. And I think I'm not sure if you've used any of Dr. Shelton's oils, Animal EO, but she's got some really high quality products.
I'm aware. There's a story there I won't go
Yes,
into.
there is. Yes, and it's interesting on which side of the story you want to fall, right?
That's right.
Right on. So Stephanie was looking at getting the Lotus Stone to put EO drops on to diffuse that way. And so I guess she's in a situation where there's constant exposure to mold.
Yeah, so there's
Girl,
an
get out of
excellent
there.
book. There's an excellent book, and I'm not going to remember the author's name right now, but it's actually on my Amazon store, but it's called The Mold RX, like the mold prescription. And this doctor wrote a book about using Thieves essential oil, which is a blend of essential oils from Young Living, and then the cleaning products from Thieves to help the body detox, help you clean the home, all of those things. And so that book is really helpful to anybody that's struggling with those issues.
Right. I think thieves oil is kind of the classic for cleaning out the evil spirits. And I know because the story is like the thieves would put this mixture of oils on themselves to go
That's
rob
right.
graves during the bubonic plague, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So pretty cool stuff.
That was my first introduction. I went to a quote unquote class 100 years ago. And that's all this girl was talking about was thieves and the plague. And I thought, this is some sort of voodoo and witchcraft. And I was a complete skeptic. And it was probably a couple years later when I had a dog in my training program that we were not making enough progress with. And I'm like, there has to be another answer. So I started looking into essential oils and nutrition and all of those, and all of that put me on the path of Chinese medicine and all of those things. And so, yeah, but I really was a skeptic. And when I first bought my starter kit, it had, I think, 12 oils in it, and it sat in my closet for over a year because I was afraid to use them. I didn't know how. And
Right.
the girl that I was purchasing them through, there's a process of ordering those oils. She didn't know. She was just selling stuff, right? She was not educated. And so that was a big deal. It was important for me to become truly educated, which is why I took the animal aromatherapy classes.
Right on, right on. And Lori's got an interesting question. Is there an oil that you'd be concerned about being toxic to dogs?
No,
And
not
using?
really. I mean, all of the ones that are in the brand that I use, I feel completely safe with.
Right on.
You will hear that tea tree is going to take out all the dogs and cats on the planet, that it's toxic. You will hear that. And there are several others that make it to that quote unquote toxic list. And I actually have them all listed on my website. But tea tree, for me, it's an antifungal oil. So I will pull it out on an as needed basis. There are some people, it also works as a great cleaning product. So I don't put it in the diffuser, I put it in the cleaning product, or I'll put it in an ointment or a salve or a misting spray and use it that way. So if you're breathing in the same oil, no matter what it is, all day, every day, without any rotation, without any fresh air exposure, then yeah, anything could be a problem. I mean, water could be a problem if we drink too much of that, So it's
Yeah.
how you use it and its intended purpose.
Right on. And so I think that's it. I dropped you have to be cognizant of moderation, and doing things that are going to be safe. So on your website, you have got some really amazing resources. So y'all head over to Dana's website. She's got some nutrition tips, information about essential oils for dogs, all sorts of really cool stuff. So all of the things that she's been chatting about here, I think you can find some basic starter information.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you really are a wealth of knowledge. And I think what you're doing in terms of helping your clients become better advocates for their pets is critically important. If we can, that whole adage, if we give a man a fish, he'll eat for a meal, but if we teach him to fish, then
right. And I'll say this just because it clicked in my brain, that if I have a dog that is unwell, we don't know what's wrong with it. Sometimes the vets, they throw up their hands and say, I don't know what else to do. I have seen essential oils do some pretty amazing things. Now, we may not be able to have them ingest it. We may not even want them to. But if I can get them on the body, or maybe a sublingual application or into the jawline where it's going to hit that membrane and go into the bloodstream, I've seen some really effective progress and some turnarounds that blew everybody's mind. So a lot of time you'll hear me say, and I think it's on my website, when you think you've tried everything, there's always something else to try. And for me, that's essential oils if you've never done it.
Right on. And you've got other tricks up your sleeve as well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right on. So when we think about, so we started off talking about toxicities and toxins and that kind of stuff. And we discussed, where sources are. But aside from that, what do you think is one of the most critical pieces that most pet parents are missing when it comes to dogs that have complex behavioral issues or any other health condition for that matter?
Well, make sure I'm tracking with you here. But I think one thing would be to have a partner, a coach, an experienced person, right? Who can help guide them and help put the pieces of the puzzle together. What I see quite often, and even in the Facebook group that we all manage with you, is people will throw out a wild, crazy answer without knowing that individual, without knowing that dog, or what else is going into the environment or into the bowl. And we fling out suggestions that are probably well intended, but not well educated, right? And not maybe right for that particular individual animal.
Right on.
Did that answer your question?
And that's part of it, right?
Okay.
Because we go, like, this is where so many pet parents are frustrated. They're not getting the answers from the vet. They go to the internet and they just start trying this, that, the other. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden they've got 17 supplement kits and the dog is
Right.
still not well, or maybe it's even worse. And
Right.
so part of it is we don't tend to go to the basics. And I think part of it is that we don't know what the basics are. So
Food
for
first. Food
exactly.
first always.
Yeah, exactly that. Like if you're feeding Doritos or the equivalent of dog Doritos, it's going to be really hard to get your
Yes.
dog with chronic inflammatory problems back on the road to health because it's a
Right.
pro-inflammatory diet. So so there is that. And then instead of trying the spaghetti method of, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? Invest your money into a partner that's going to help you choose appropriately for what's going on with your dog.
Right.
Yeah.
And I say to my clients all the time, we're not going to do everything at once. If it's always food first, and if we look at the food and we think the recipe is great, then we got to look at the ingredients. Is there something in there causing a problem? But then let's not just throw the book at it. Let's be strategic, because if we throw the book at it, we're not going to know which one worked. And we're also not going to know if they start conflicting with each other, right? And I walk into clients' houses all the time and I see these lines of supplements and I'm thinking, do you even, some of these you don't need, some of these overlap in ingredients. And then we run into the issue of maybe there's too many sources of vitamin D now.
Yes.
Right? You got it in this supplement, this food, this whatever. And suddenly now we've got a whole new crisis because we have not paid attention to the big picture and the details.
Right on. And I think that's super critical. So, yeah, if we don't start with the basics, so food is certainly one, clean water is another. If you do nothing but filter out the chlorine from tap water, you're ahead of the game. And there's even deeper levels where you can take out a boatload of other stuff we don't want in the water.
Right.
So I think that's what we forget is just the super simple things, a little bit of movement, a little bit of exercise, and then also you, the pet parent, if you are so stressed out and you're spending all of your time on the internet trying to find the solution and you are like up to here with stress,
Overwhelm.
you're overwhelmed, your dog is going to feel that too. And that's where, if we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off, it is our pets feel that from us.
Right.
So if we can take the deep breath, sit down, relax with them for a few minutes, that will help everybody.
Right. And, it's not just what's in the food, it's what's in your environment. Again, we mentioned those plug-ins, but laundry soaps, the cleaning products, the dryer sheets, sometimes even the perfumes and the lotions and potions that the women wear or the men wear. And those can be contributing to our dog's health issues, and we just don't realize they're contributing to your health issues and you don't know it. But I always say your dog's barefoot and naked in your house and probably spends more time in your house than you do. And so they're absorbing everything through their fur, through the pads of their feet, through the air. If it's present, it's going into the body some way or another.
Right on. And I think that's the thing. We get so accustomed to what's in the background, we don't see it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great recommendation. If it has an odor and you're putting it on your skin, really, really read through those ingredients carefully.
And you may know more about this than I do, but I've always heard that fragrance-free is not odor-free, that it's a chemical creation to take the odor away. So there's still a chemical there that may not be healthy for us to mask those odors. They're not eliminated, they're just changed.
And it just depends, right? Because that's become such a big catchword in marketing. It may well be a chemical that's neutralized the odor.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of having less, you actually have more. Right. So that's why it is super critical to read the label. And, for laundry products, it's a little bit tough, but for almost everything else in your home, if you can't pronounce one or two of the ingredients, don't buy it or
Yep.
get rid of it and find a substitute. I think that there's so much, that we know from the environmental working group studies that dogs and cats carry somewhere between 3 and 93 times our toxic burden. And we're all walking around like with a cesspool of chemicals in us.
Mm-hmm.
Our pets are exposed to even more and taking in even more.
Right. And especially those dogs that have to be groomed pretty often. I always said, you know what's in your groomer shampoo, because a lot of times they're buying these big old jugs of stuff for bulk purchase. But and it'll say anti-allergen or medicated or whatever. But if you actually go look it up and look up all the ingredients, you're going to find all those phthalates and sulfates and
all that stuff.
All of that. And sometimes those ingredients will even say skin irritant. Even though it's supposed to be soothing, it may actually be very drying or very irritating once it's used significantly. So I tell my clients, take your own shampoo with them. I love the Animal Sense shampoo. I love the new 4-legger products. They're all pretty awesome.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think, and 4-legger's done an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing at getting all the garbage out and being clear about what's in and what those ingredients are. So I think that's super critical. And then, Patty's raising the question everybody wants to know. We all know about detox and we should do it, but nobody knows what that really means and how often would you do it? And so how do you approach that concept?
Well, your answer might be different than mine, but I have my clients do a liver cleanse, we'll call it. And I have 2 formats. One is food with some supplements, and the other is an essential oil protocol. And we do that in the spring prior to going into the Chinese medicine season of liver. And then we do it coming out of summer after all the glyphosate and fertilizers and all those products that our neighbors are using and our dogs have been exposed to. So I do a liver cleanse twice a year. I do an anti-parasitic cleanse. Mine is with essential oils. I do that right about this time of year, actually. We're getting ready to do, I'm trying to think what month we're in. We'll do it in April. And the way the cycle of parasites works, and it's not just intestinal parasites that I think we have to worry about. Sometimes there are other things going on in the blood or the cells, and we've got to figure, and I'm a big sushi eater. So my mentor is like, I wouldn't touch sushi ever, but every time you do, you need to parasite cleanse. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't do it that frequently. But for the dogs, I will do those things a couple of times a year, or we'll look at a heavy metal detox on a case-by-case basis. If you know your water has been testing for heavy metals, and you should test your water, then, and your dog has been drinking that, then we may need to do a heavy metal cleanse. Or if we've tried many other things and we haven't found the answer, then that may be the next step in the process. So, and one of the keys about doing that is we have to be careful. If we just stir stuff up in the body, it may not actually be eliminated. It just might get moved around. So that's when we start talking about making sure we have the binders and the things that are really going to help the body eliminate those things.
Right on. And so, Patty, I think, you got a fairly detailed answer from Dana. And what I would say is that it is a daily process, but I do it in a more gentle way. For that type of detox, I think you really need to work with a practitioner, because we can indeed create more harm than good if we push it too fast and the dog's body is not prepared to deal with all of the garbage coming out of its cells. So that's amazing. So for me, it's doing very simple things like making sure that we're supporting the detoxification process with the liver, with the GI tract. Really, what happens is if the GI tract is dysbiotic, it should be the lungs are the number one detox organ. The GI tract should be number two, and then the liver. But what's happened is if the dog is dysbiotic, the liver is now number two and it's overloaded. So that's where super simple things to support the liver, like milk thistle, glutathione, are helpful. But really the main emphasis for me would be on working on improving gut health, using more fiber in the diet, that sort of stuff. And then once we've got those sort of smoothed out, then that's where you really should work with somebody that can support you through that detox process, because it is many layers. It used to be on the human side, if you had a lot of candida, they'd be like, oh, we'll treat the candida. Well, the candida is actually protecting us from the heavy metal intoxication. So really the right order would be to work on the gut, then work on heavy metals and so on and so forth. And then the candida goes away when it doesn't have to suck up so many heavy metals.
And just like, you're talking about the everyday approach, there are herbs and there are essential oils that will address things like petrochemicals or heavy metals or whatever. And if you have a natural rotation of those elements into your diet, like my dogs have their own little bag of essential oils. I don't use the same one all the time. I vary what I do, but we're getting those naturally on a regular rhythm. And, just like I was making a post today, lemon essential oil, for example, will detoxify petrochemicals. That's why we can't put it in a styrofoam cup, because the cup will dissolve.
Yeah.
And then people will say, well, if it's dissolving a cup, what's it doing to my body? Well, your body's not a synthetic product, right? Yeah. And so that takes people a minute to wrap their head around, that it's actually doing good in our body when it would destroy plastics and styrofoams.
Right on. So I think, that's the deal. Again, there's so many things out there that sound, just at first read, super simple. But part of what we want to do is make sure that you're not ending up hurting your dog by trying to go too heavy too fast. In humans, there's something called Herxheimer reactions. I think we see this with our dogs, but we often end up just seeing really profound vomiting and diarrhea,
right,
versus those flu-like symptoms. And they probably have those too, but they're not able to say, man, I feel like crud today. So having said all of that, if you're just getting started with the basic stuff and you're on a commercial, Beneful or lower
please don't. Please don't.
lower quality diet, how can somebody where can they start safely to transition into more whole fresh foods? And I think regardless of how you approach it, whether it's raw, whether it's cooked, I think we all agree real food is super critical for health.
Absolutely. And so for me, there are two typical things that I would recommend to somebody who's staying in that perhaps what I might call a lower end of kibble. There's really high quality products. There's nothing synthetic in it that are great for dry foods. But I would start with looking at adding some fresh toppers. Make a veg medley, save whatever's left over from dinner. When you're chopping up your broccoli and you've got some left over, steam it up, chop it up, put it in the dog's bowl. It doesn't take a lot. A little bit of fresh vegetable or even a little bit of fresh meat goes a really long way into improving the nutrient profile. And then maybe look at a really good vitamin mineral supplement to add to the dog to upgrade that. Sometimes when we start adding a bunch of supplements to fix the base food, we spend as much money as we would have if we had just upgraded the base food to start with. So all of those things are important. And that's where somebody like you and I and the other coaches can guide them and say, oh, wait a minute. Now you've kind of gone down a path trying to do the right thing, but you're creating an added expenditure or maybe doing too much without really getting that balance right. And you may be blowing the budget unnecessarily.
Right on. Because And I think that's it. I mean, supplements are supposed to be just that, a supplement to the diet, and not, I mean, we hear routinely, oh my God, there's more supplements than food in my dog's bowl. And that's a problem too,
Mhm.
because we're going to create problems with that level of stuff.
Yeah, there will come a point they don't want to eat the bowl, eat the food that's in there because now it feels tainted to them in some way, or
Yeah,
it's just got so much other stuff in there that it no longer tastes good.
right on. And Karen's asking a great question. Do high quality brands have some sort of certificate of analysis available?
They do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
most of them do. And it's really, I think this is a relatively newer concept. And we just completed a certificate of analysis for heavy metals for my products. We've got the pesticides and glyphosate analysis coming up, as well as we're splitting out inorganic arsenic from total arsenic, because that's the arsenic that's actually the toxic portion. And I have to tell you, I'm a small producer, and that was terrifying. It's like, it's like, oh my God. But the good thing is that I was pleased with the results.
Good.
Unfortunately, almost every product you're going to look at has something in it in terms of heavy metals.
Yeah.
And so it's just partly because of the world we live in, and that we've created a mess, and also the world contains these metals in some quantities. So that I think that more and more we will see reputable brands produce certificates of analysis.
Mhm.
That
And
helps.
if you can't call, like, if she's asking about herbs and essential oils, if you can't call them and get a clear answer, then it's a no.
Right.
If they're not forthcoming with information, the answer is, yeah, no, you're not the right brand for me.
It's right. And so that was one of our frustrations with a company I'd used for a lot of years. We're like, can you send us your COA, to help me understand what the actual levels are? And the response back was, well, we do all this third party testing to make sure that it's at our standards, but no, we don't share our COAs. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
yeah. So exactly so. If you're getting that kind of runaround, then it's time to consider switching brands.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think, anything else that you would tell a pet parent that is sort of halfway through the journey, if you will? They've started learning about switching food, they're doing better in terms of clean water, and they're really trying to figure out what next steps would be for them.
Um, Maybe just a word of and I think we've hit on this, but a word of caution, and then to find a partner. So there's a bunch of bad information out on the interwebs, just a bunch of bad information.
Oh,
And you could post a question, and many pet parents are posting very simplified questions. We don't have enough information to give you an answer. And then I think they get frustrated because we didn't just answer the question, but some other dog mama or pet parent did. But
mm-hmm.
they're flinging out suggestions, again, without knowing your dog or cat or your budget or your history or any detail. And all of that matters to getting the plan right. And that leads to that overwhelm that we were talking about a few minutes ago. And I think that's where a really good coach, even if it's just, a one-time conversation, but you're going to get a better result if you build a strategic partnership with them, that they go through the stages of life with you. And those investments don't have to be crazy expensive. They don't have to be. But get the right support that you need to help you manage your budget, to help you understand your dog's individuality, and come up with a plan that fits that animal.
Exactly so. And that's the thing. I mean, so while we're discussing this, Rhonda's throwing out all the stuff that she's feeding her dog, but neither one of us have any idea how old her dog is, what the breed is, if he has any health issues. And so this is where it becomes dangerous for us to say, yep, that's a great idea, or no, that's a horrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of the things that you're feeding I mean, so Hippocrates didn't say actually let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. He actually said in food there is good medicine, in food there is bad medicine. And the individual, and I'm paraphrasing now, but the individual response to that food is what determines if it's a
That's
good or
right.
bad choice for that individual.
Yeah, and that's how we started this conversation is you could be putting fantastic ingredients in the bowl. But if your dog's body doesn't deal with that ingredient well, if he's got an intolerance to it, then that food's not going to be right for them.
And it's going to actually detract from your dog's health instead of serving
Mhm.
it. So, for instance, turmeric is touted as the best thing in the universe. And now we're starting to see food sensitivities because
Oh
it's in.
no, Dr. Ruth, castor oil is touted as the best thing on
Well,
earth.
and colloidal silver. I mean,
Yes.
so that's the
Yes.
thing is that, if you see, oh, this is the way, this is another person that's had a good experience with something in particular, but it's not the only way, and it may not be the
Right.
way for your dog,
Mhm.
right? Right on. Cool. Dana, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Here is Dana's website. She has a wicked amount of information there that will help you understand how to formulate some better questions, some things to be concerned about. And it is well worth your investment to consult with her, to consult with the other questions, or the other coaches,
Mhm.
because they do have the training to help you go through this journey and optimize your dog's health instead of giving you a cut and dried package that's a one size fits all.
Yeah, and I'll just share positive feedback for you, Dr. Ruth. I had a case come up this week on MMM. I can't even, I know it's something to do with mastitis, right?
Masticatory muscle myositis. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know if
it.
you say
And
that.
I'm like, I've never had a case on this. I went back to my notes from the class you taught us, and there was my answer. So,
Awesome. Beautiful.
yeah. So if anybody's interested in learning more about doing this kind of work yourself, Dr. Ruth's class is fantastic.
Right on. So I created the Holistic Pet Health Coach certification program for veterinarians and veterinary technicians. And we thankfully have had some vets and vet techs join, but what's happened over time is that people like you, Dana, that are in what I call the paraprofessions have taken this course and they have run with it because they see what's happening to their clients' dogs on a daily basis,
Mhm.
and it's not good. So thank
No.
you for
Well,
that.
that was it for me. I started out as a trainer when I left my corporate America job. And I was seeing dogs in my training program that were not getting better. My clients would call me and their 2-year-old dog had died. Just all sorts of things. And so that's what put me on this path of going, there's got to be another answer. It can't just be about training behaviors. There's something happening in the body. And
Right.
boy, did that unlock a world of education and fascination for me with all of this.
You mean it's not just that the dog is bad, it's what's in its
No.
environment and its bowl?
Yeah.
Cool. And Sheila, I'm so glad you've enrolled. We are so excited to have you on board. All right, y'all. Thanks for your attention. Glad that these are useful for you. That's our entire purpose, is to get you information that you can use. And we will see you next week. Have a great one.
Thank you.